Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look
Rank.
once in a while, you could miss it.
What is going on? Welcome into Adjust the Ranks. I'm your host, Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel over on Twitter. We have a very special guest here, which we'll get to in just 1 second. But we just want to remind you what we are doing today. It is a 1QB PPR non-tight end premium 4-round rookie mock draft. And of course, we've had plenty of amazing guests, and we are wrapping up March with an amazing guest here today. This is Kevin Coleman at TheBoys_22 on Twitter, the host, creator, all things the Devi Royale over on social media, over on YouTube. And Kevin Coleman, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you and are looking for you to help school us on this rookie class.
Hey, man, appreciate the invite. I've seen your previous guests, so I got to live up to high expectations. We got Debro and my boy Fitz. So the last two guys that I saw you had on. So I'm just excited to be here. Rookie's my thing. Obviously doing this stuff with the Devi Royale for so long. Really diving into the class. We're getting really into the rookie guide that we're creating. So I'm in full rookie mode. Even though it's March, we've been doing these guys for a long time, talking about these guys for years. So I'm excited.
Listen, man, I love it. And I'm not the rookie expert. I prefer dynasty strategy, but I do feel like, I have a good handle on drafting and what it takes to be successful there. So hoping to add value there. And of course, adding the expertise of Kevin here on the show for everybody. So you don't just have to listen to my wild takes. Before we get started here, just as a matter of advertisement, if I can find the stupid button, we have a bunch of things going on here. The first of which is in April. That's April 5th. We are opening up the Fantasy Football Universe Discord. Please drop in and join in to that Discord. We'll be advertising that over the next couple of weeks, and we'll be firing that up in April. So we hope if you'd like to join the community, really just talk ball, get access to our content, totally free, not pushing anything at the moment, really just want to build a community. Please come over and join that. Really excited about what's going on there. And then, of course, we had our March schedule up here. I haven't filled the April one yet, just in terms of creating the content. But just so you know what's coming up, we got Dave Kluge or Kluge. Sorry, I don't have that from Football Guys. He's going to be coming on in early April. David Gautieri, Tom Pasquarello from the League Winners, Andrew Erickson will be on, another Fantasy Pros guy. And we're still looking to fill up April, May, and beyond, just trying to mock draft with anyone and everyone who will come on the show and just share their knowledge with us to better help you in your fantasy mock drafts, rookie, dynasty, whatever it may be. So that's out of the way. We're going to get into this in just a second. But first, we're going to say, hey, Jamie, no, unfortunately, we don't have any spots left in the rookie mock. It did fill up. We will get you next time. Hit me up early. We'll get you in the mock for sure. Anyone else, please, if you're interested in these mock drafts and joining with all of our guests, please come over and at the very least, Fantasy Football Universe, over on Twitter. That's where we drop all of this stuff, but also at Adjust the Ranks. You can follow us. You get the first drop and first chance to get into these mock drafts if you so choose. So with all of that out of the way, Kevin, we're going to do this first. This is pickerwheel.com, not a sponsor, but we are going to spin the wheel and try and decide in advance, which of course we don't normally do, but we want to add a little bit of context to what we're looking to do here in our rookie drafts. Of course, a dynasty rookie draft does not come without a dynasty team. So we're going to kind of figure out what our dynasty teams look like. And look, it's not going to move the needle tremendously here in terms of who we draft. A lot of times we're looking at best player available. At the same time, if we end up being, for example, QB needy, maybe it helps to break a tie between a Shadur Sanders and maybe the RB2, RB3, depending on where you have them ranked in the first round. So, Kev, do you want to spin the wheel first or do you want to defer here? What are you thinking?
I'll take it first. I'll spin it. Let's see what I get.
That's it. I love the boldness. You are the first guest to spin the wheel first. Let's have a look. Let's try and get this all out of here. There we go.
Position needy. Ooh,
all right. That is a tough one. And we have, of course, a wonderful little celebration here with confetti. We wouldn't have it any other way, but let's switch the wheel and figure out which position you are neediest at. Again, it's probably not going to move the needle too much, but if you are position needy at tight end, again, this is not tight end premium, and it is one QB. So position needy at tight end, you might be looking to the class. I'm wondering, Kevin, before we start up here, what are you thinking about the tight end class as a whole? Is it really just the top two guys and everyone else, or do you have some late round sleepers? How are you feeling at tight end?
There's like four guys, I think, when you're looking at the tight end position that you could be like, hey, I could see them like where they're getting drafted relative to ADP, right? Loveland, Warren, Arroyo, and Mason Taylor. I'm a kind of big Mason Taylor guy. I do think that he has value there. So like those four guys at ADP, I really like. And I think that those are the guys, if you're looking at tight ends. Yeah. I mean, there's other guys. Do you have Fannin? You have some of these other guys out there that I think they consider deep, but if you're looking for a 12 personnel tight end that you think can be on the field every single down, I think those four guys, the ones I mentioned, are the guys that go after right now at ADP. And then after that, I think there's some question marks at the position.
Yeah. Quick thoughts on Oronde Gadsden and his production.
I like Oronde Gadsden. The issue is he's a tweener, right? We've seen this before where, what is he? And I think his best probably comp is the Eagles from Florida State last year. I don't know why I'm mispronouncing. I can't remember his name. Johnny Wilson. I think that's really what you're looking at, and like what Wilson's done this year. So like, obviously landing spot's going to matter. I know all of those things that you come into play there. I just don't see a clear path for him to be relevant to a fantasy like drafting in the first 4 rounds.
Fair. Love the insight. Johnny Wilson, love the wingspan. We called him the Albatross. We tried to get that nickname going. Didn't take off, but maybe this year we'll see if he does anything for us. I'm going to spin the wheel here and figure out what we are looking at. I'm in a full rebuild. All right. So really it's best position available, but as we listen to the music and get the confetti flying once again, the one thing in a full rebuild for me, Kevin, is that I really don't want to take running back. I'd much prefer to lean wide receiver, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to like eschew the value on the board. I'm going to make sure that I mostly take best player available, but wide receiver over running back for me in Dynasty. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're a full rebuild, that's fine. I think the one thing though is I'm always about tiers. So if you're sitting there, and even if you're in a rebuild, I think that if you're sitting there, especially the wide receiver position, which there's a pretty clear tier break after maybe like the fourth guy or third guy, depending on where they land. Even Ted McMillan, I don't know. People love to hate Tet right now. So like I saw recently a bigger analyst on Twitter saying like, oh, I wouldn't take him till late first. So like if you're looking at it and you really like the running back landing spots, even if you're in a rebuild, you can always just take best player available if that is a running back and then flip them at some point, maybe for more value. So to me, it just really comes down to where those tiers are at. Like, hey, do you feel like you're kind of reaching at that wide receiver 4-ish mark, or can I get that running back 3 that's talented, valuable, and I really think like a Hampton, let's say you're sitting at 102 and they have Hampton as a clear tier above Tet, you might want to lean Hampton, and then you can kind of move him and off of him and pivot off of him if you need to.
Excellent. I love that insight. And that's really listen, we're all making considerations. We want to make sure that we're drafting the best guys to our fantasy team. And that's what we're going to try to walk you through. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're not going too far overboard. And for example, we're totally, upset about the size of, it was Kenny Pickett or Cam Ward. Here's hands, or we're totally fading, Restrepo for that ridiculous 40 time. Maybe we should be, but these are all pieces of the puzzle. So we need to make sure that we're, just weighing them against everything else. And for the people who watch tape and who study production and analytics, just to make sure that you're putting all of those pieces together so that you can make the best informed decision possible.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think there's no perfect way to draft. Like, and there's no perfect prospect. You just take it all into account. Like, I'm not an anti-analytics guy, but I think sometimes we get wrapped up in too many numbers out here. So I think when you're looking on social media, you see a lot of people post like data. what is that data in context to that player, or like, why does it matter? Like, I think that's the big thing is like, why does it matter? Sure. Jay Stein is doing a thing on YouTube for us right now, going through like the main analytic metrics that he likes, that he uses, and he's much smarter than I am. So like, I will follow that. Like, I'll look at that and say, okay, what makes the most sense here? But a lot of times it simply comes down to team fit. Like, there's a lot of it, like we argue and we do this stuff for months, and then they get drafted by a team, and that team is going to utilize them the right way. And I go back to, I don't know if you know who Dan Jeremiah is, but he does stuff for NFL Network. I love him, and I love his podcast with Bucky Brooks. He said this a few years ago, and it still rings true in my head. I think about it all the time. He's like, great teams draft great players with a plan. And like, I just go back to like, what is their plan? So every time someone gets drafted, I'm like, what is their plan here? And I get nervous about bad teams drafting guys based on upside, because sometimes they don't have a plan, a coaching staff's not ready for that scheme, or whatever the case may be. So that's what I always go back to. I always say, okay, if they draft this guy, what is their plan moving forward with him? And you can miss. Trey Lance was a miss for a lot of people. I thought they were going to have a great plan for him. They did not. Like, it did not pan out. So it can miss there, but I'm always thinking about, okay, what is their plan for this prospect? What has that staff been able to do with similar prospects like them? And am I comfortable drafting them at that ADP?
Absolutely. As a Patriots fan, McCorkle Jones, Mac Jones, talk about not having a plan, didn't even have an offense in place. So yeah, I totally hear you on that. And you want to make sure that, you're also betting on good teams, right? Good players, good fit, but also good teams. If I don't know if it's Genty or Hampton or whoever we think is going to go at 12 to Dallas. I'm not sure Dallas is a good team right now. They're better probably than they were last year. But if you get a guy drafted there, you just want to temper your expectations a little bit. I think Dallas has a lot of building to do to get back to where they need to be.
Yeah, unfortunately, as a Dallas fan, yes, unfortunately, we're leaning there on that one. Yeah, we're on lockstep there.
Yeah, I hear you. So let's jump into this draft. In Restrepo, we still believe, says Mike. Mike, I hear you. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Let's see where he ends up going in this mock draft. Again, this is our 1 QB non-tight end premium. We are doing PPR here, and we are firing it up from the jump. Let's go here. And Kev, you're sitting at the 105. What are you expecting or looking for here, especially as a position, a tight end needy team? Are you hoping you get a Tyler Warren here, or is there somebody else you prefer?
So I think, it's interesting because at 105 and one quarterback, you're going to see a tier like probably quickly at 103, I think, or depending on what you think of Chet. I mean, 104, 105, yeah. I mean, if you are really needy for a tight end, and if Warren is sitting there, Loveland or Warren, depending on what you like in your rankings, I think you have to consider it, because I do think that based on that, if my roster's ready to go, and like, let's say I've just been having, Ferguson on my tight end. I thought he was going to break out. Cole Komet, or maybe you've missed at that position for some tight end twos out there. I think Warren is definitely an option there. I think if one of the running backs falls, I think the question is going to be like, where's Emeka Egbuka? Because I'm pretty high on Emeka Egbuka. And if he's sitting there at 105 and one quarterback, I'd probably lean there and then hope that one of those kind of tight ends after that in that second round come there. But that's probably where I'm at. I'm always interested to see where quarterbacks go on one quarterback, because it's always funny seeing it, because not a lot of people play one quarterback anymore. And so it's always funny to see where they go.
Yep, I totally agree with you. And for myself, of course, plenty of super flex leagues, and we're trying to get those quarterbacks. But, we got Cam Ward in a one quarterback league. I imagine he's still kind of a back end of the first type of guy. What are you thinking in terms of that, as you referenced, that kind of devaluation of the quarterback position in one quarterback? You think he sneaks into the first round, or would you just prefer to pass and maybe go Sanders or someone else?
I have a hard time. So I do the combined rankings, and I kind of look at where are the combined rankings at, and where are the, when you're looking at kind of where he'd fit in. So he's outside my top 15 right now for combined rankings. Before, we kind of expect Titans to be there. So like when we do that, so that if you're outside the top 15, I'm not drafting you in the first round of a rookie draft. Like, unless, what if the little board that we had with QB needy, and like, I really need a quarterback. I think maybe last year, I ended up taking in a one quarterback league, Bo Nix in the early second, because I really needed a quarterback, and a lot of them already went off. It was a weird league where people need that. And I look okay now. Like, people are like, people are roasting my ass in the chat, but like afterwards, like now that the year's kind of gone, now they're trading for him. So I laugh a little bit. But I think it just really comes down to like, yeah, where's that tier at? Do you feel like, hey, I might as well take quarterback here? But there is also a lot of QBs that you can go trade for in that 12 to 18 marker that are kind of down a little bit, in one quarterback that gives you upside. And even Tua's, he's really low in rankings right now. And so like, that's a guy that can put up, when healthy, consistent quarterback one numbers like 10 to 12 range, which you might be okay with, and you just go take another position player in your rookie draft. So I think you always have to look at that, like what makes the most sense in terms of your build.
Yeah, I love that completely. And you did get Tyler Warren at the 105. We have 6 picks here. What do you think about Warren and the way the rest of the board has fallen so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that. It was either him or Mecca. And I think just based on, if you do need a tight end, you could probably slot in Warren as a top 5 tight end as soon as he gets drafted, wherever he goes. I'm assuming based on just dynasty rankings too. So you're kind of playing with house money value. I know it's not premium, but there still is, like, you're talking about a guy that could be potentially a wide receiver 2 numbers. He could put up wide receiver 2 numbers. So I think just based on the outlook of the team, based on kind of what I was looking at in terms of who was that next tier, I think right there at 105, if you add McMillan and Warren, that tier to Judkins is pretty, I don't want to say pretty big because we don't know yet, but there's a gap, there's a gulf there. Like there's like there's a value tier there. And I was going to take a Mecca, him falling to 110. I mean, that just shows you maybe I made the right decision based on value out there. But I'll take Warren. And I think that he could slot into he's not Brock. But he could slot into someone's number 2 option, and that's what you're looking for there. I think there's a lot of different areas in that first round. The Jets would be interesting, in my opinion. I think the Jags sitting there at 5 would be interesting. Like, there's a scenario where he's someone's number 2 option. That's what you'd look for at that tight end position.
Yep, I love it. And we see the board here. I'm probably a Colston Loveland fan here at the 112. I'm not going to do that because I always do that. And instead, if I can do it in time, I'm going to take Matthew Golden here for the sole reason that I think he falls into the first round of the NFL draft. And I think at this point, as the wide receiver 4 at the 112, I think that's going to be a pretty good value for a first round wide receiver. What are you thinking about Golden, how you view him, and how you feel like the NFL views him?
So it's so funny because I've been doing this long enough. So I loved Golden like 2 years ago. It's so funny because I still get people saying thank you for liking him, like when he came in as a freshman. I was very high on Golden. And I used to battle some of like the guys about Golden. Like I would say, hey, he's pushing for wide receiver 2. We'd have these arguments about him or Luther Burden like after their freshman year. So I think but it's funny now because now I see some people have him as crazy as high wide receiver 1. I'm just not there yet with him. The thing that Golden does well is he can separate pretty well at the top of his routes. He can pretty much fit in any system. You saw him go from Houston to Texas, and you saw that he was their go-to guy. He really outplayed Bond. From a route running perspective, he does it, and he's just simply, analytics is going to hate this, but he's a gamer. Like when he's in those games, they look to get him the ball. He was double teamed at times. The playoff, he looked really well. Like, and if you can get a player like that at 112, I think that's a smash. Like Golden to me can be a solid wide receiver 2. And I think you'd be really happy with that.
Yeah, agree with that. And, I like his body control as well. He seems to be able to do everything that you want him to be able to do at the wide receiver position. I do think that between him and Emeka Egbuka, I think it's a lot closer than some people want to believe on both sides of the argument. So that's a tough one for me. Is Egbuka far and away ahead of Golden for you, or how do you feel about that one?
No, they're in the same tier. Those two guys, in my opinion, are very close. I think Emeka. So I think it depends on what a team is looking for, because I think Golden can play X or in the slot. Like I think he can kind of be moved around. Emeka is a clear slot guy, right? So if you're going to put there, so if he gets drafted by a team that needs that slot receiver that's going to kind of pepper him with targets, I would definitely lean more Emeka. But if you go to a team like with Matthew, and let's say, they had that plan, like I mentioned earlier in the show, and they say, hey, we're going to move them around a lot. Maybe it's quarterback too. I think all these things come to mind, like who's going to throw him the football. Because, I mean, look what Matthew made Quinn Ewers look pretty damn good last year, which is hard to do. I don't know if you've seen Quinn
really
Ewers play football,
to do.
But it was hard to do. So I think there's also that too. So it really comes down to landing spot with those guys. It's a lazy argument. I have Emeka slightly ahead just because I think Emeka, just from an analytical perspective, I think he hits checks a lot of marks too there, and from a film perspective. But it wouldn't, if Golden goes to the Chargers, I mean, I'm all in. But I don't know how that's going to work. I think him and Ladd would actually work well together because of the slot X kind of roles and what they could do in that offense. But I'd be happy to have Herbert and Golden together. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, even the guy you mentioned earlier, Bo Nix in Denver, Matthew Golden in Denver could be a lot of fun as well. Let's just get to one more question before we kind of break down what's happened so far and talk a little bit about Trey Harris. He went at the 204 here. Let's talk a little bit about him as compared to Golden and just for you in general.
Yeah, I mean, so I have Trey Harris a little behind there. Trey Harris is an interesting one because at Ole Miss, when you're looking at what he did at Ole Miss over there, a lot of scheme targets there from Lane to him, a lot of kind of quick slants, a lot of quick screens. I think for Trey, I think the difference between Trey and Golden for me, Trey's got to work on his route running. I think that he does not have the same route running as Golden, and I don't think he has the same like linear athleticism, like explosiveness and short area quickness stuff. Like Golden separates himself there, I think, and then the route tree thing. So that's why I have Harris a little lower than Golden, and why I'd have Golden in a different tier is just the route running is just completely different. I think catch point, he's taller, he does those things pretty well. I actually think Harris does pretty good against like press for the most part, where Golden maybe struggles there a little bit more. But overall, it's just that route running. It's that limited route tree. It's that explosiveness, that short area quickness stuff. You don't really see that from Harris. They're just two different kind of receivers.
Yep, that's fair. And before we get to your next pick here, you did manage Jaden Higgins at the 205. What do you feel about Higgins? He seems to be a darling of everyone. I mean, the guy looks good.
I just think he's going to get higher draft capital than people think. Like, I think that I keep going back and forth, like even to my Cowboys, like, and I don't want to make this a Cowboy show, but we do need a wide receiver, maybe in that second round, if they do go running back, or there's been a lot of spots where they trade back. I've seen a lot of deals like where they trade back and they get them. And Higgins just makes a ton of sense for a lot of teams in the second round. So if he does get that capital, like if he does kind of, if you see the capital that you like, really good body control, really good making himself against zone. I think he does really good there. Catch rate is great. Really soft hands. Excellent receiver from that standpoint. Like, I think that will be really, really kind of like elevate teams and elevate different teams' offenses too. So if you can get him in the second round where he's that, I really like that, because he could be, I mean, if just based on the Iowa State tape, like he could be a wide receiver one for a team. I think he's that talented.
Yeah, I love that. And big guy, of course, for myself, I went with Jack Bech. Let's pretend that's Jalen Knoll instead of Jack Bech there at the 212. Of course, he's a little buried in ADP. We're still kind of fumbling around through ADP here in March. It's a little difficult. There's a couple of guys who just aren't even on Sleeper's radar at the moment. So we're still in the degenerate dog days of March here. We're doing our best. Let's have a look at the draft and how it's fallen so far. We talked mostly about the first round, although we have Luther Burden and Travis Hunter there, seemingly pretty early, I'd say. We have the running backs who we haven't discussed in the second round, and you see what's going on here in the third. What are you thinking about the way the draft's fallen so far? Is there any value that you really like or are really concerned about at the moment?
I thought it was interesting that Ward, I mean, I know Sanders was an auto pick, but Ward went at 111, Milrow at 207, again, like where the quarterbacks, that's where ADP is though. So like, I think I'd rather take a shot on Jackson Dart in the third.
100%.
I think that's much more value from a quarterback standpoint if you're going to take a shot at anybody from there. So that stands out to me. I thought the Dart pick was really good. As far as like the running backs, I mean, you're really looking at second and third round being kind of like pick your poison of what running back you like. I think Devin Neal at 209 is a lot of fun because he's got 3-down potential. He's a guy that had 1,000 straight yards 4 years in a row. Like from a production standpoint, he hits a lot of those markers there. And then obviously the third round is just going to come down to where these guys land at the running back spot. But probably the biggest thing that stands out, if you can get Jackson Dart in a 302, even at one quarterback, that's where the value to me stands. Like, hey, I wouldn't mind taking a shot at him, his upside, where he lands, his ceiling, those type of things.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think a lot of the running backs are interesting values here as well. You got Cam Scatterbo, Dylan Sampson, who I love as an inside runner, Devin Neal, who seems to kind of do it all very well, even if he's not kind of exceptional at any one thing. RJ Harvey, who's super explosive. So those second round of running backs, and even guys like Damian Martinez, Bashal Tutin, who you ended up taking, Ollie Gordon, those guys have some really, really good tape. That you can throw on, and Brashard Smith. So a lot of really interesting running back value here. I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger since Noel is gone. I'm going to take Restrepo 4.85 or whatever it ended up being with the 40. Be damned. I'm going to give him a shot and just kind of at the end of the third bank on the production we saw in the film that we see and the fact that he could be okay.
He could be okay. I go back to, I know he ran a terrible 40, but there is no way that kid was running that prior to his pro day. And his agent was like, bro, you cannot run. Like, so I really do think something happened, right? Like, I think maybe he wasn't, whatever happened there. I think he's better than what he ran in his 40. And if you can get him at the 312, as opposed to what people were drafting him at earlier in the season, I think you're okay with that. I think you're okay with that value. Yeah. But that's what it comes down to. I think Noel is a hell of a value, sitting there at 306. Him and Higgins are two very solid wide receivers. And I think I go back to tape. It's so funny because you go back and I'll watch all 22 for Jalen Noel, and you just see Higgins do some things. You're like, damn, that kid is good. And then you go back, you're watching Higgins, and you see Noel do things. And I think the thing about Jalen Noel, because I just wrote up Noel in our rookie guide, actually, I was watching him. I think some people think he can just be the slot because I think it was 65% the slot according to PFF or something like that. But he has the skills to play on the outside as an X. I think that he is versatile enough in an offense to do both. But I think expands his ceiling from a fantasy aspect too. And I think he can do some things in the return game. And I think he could be a lot of all-encompassing player. So if you can get a talent like that in the third, I think you're excited about that.
Yep, totally agree. And while you make your pick, we'll just recap here the third round. Isaiah Bond. We have a couple of auto draft picks in here. So Bond and Milrow and maybe Jordan James are a little earlier than we expect. But you see how the third round went. We talked about Jackson Dart. You see the tight ends that went off the board there. DJ Giddens and Brashard Smith. And then I ended with Restrepo. Here in the fourth, we have a lot of tight ends coming off the board. It's non-tight end premium, but at the same time, who else are you going to take shots on late in the fourth and one QB? Might as well, because all of these guys are athletic enough or / productive enough in college to kind of give you a sense that they could hit. And then you got, the prayers of Savion Williams getting enough touches or Torrey Horton being able to find the opportunity to come in. Kyle Williams, who, is Chris Sims wide receiver 2 and the darling of Twitter in the last 48 hours here. So a lot of dart throws here. But if you look at the third and fourth round, maybe there's a name or two that you like as a dart throw for yourself who you haven't seen talked about already.
Yeah, I mean, Brashard Smith, I was a huge Brashard Smith going from last year for college fantasy. I like him at 311. That's pretty good value with where he's at. I go back and forth on where his capital is going to be. Is he going to be late day 2 or is he going to be early day 3? It's just the sub 200 guys. If you're not a Gibbs talent, it's just really hard. I'm glad he came in at 196, whatever he came in at the combine, because I was a little worried they were cooking those books a little bit too much out there at SMU. And it would have been 190, but that's, excuse me, that's a solid value there. DJ Giddens is another one. He doesn't get enough love, over 1,500 all-purpose yards last year. Can be a 3-down kid. I think he's a good receiver and he can be an early down back. Those are the type of guys that I love taking shots on in the third or fourth round. Give me those, if you can. Here's the question. I guess this is the question. It's Jaden Blue going in the fourth. I like Jaden Blue. I think he's one of the fastest players in the draft. He has that. But Jaden Blue's role is pretty much pass catcher, change of pace guy. And that's fine. I mean, that's an okay shot if it's PPR and you can have that. But if you can get a Giddens who has a role everywhere, 3-down guy, early down work, can catch passes, and is a pretty good pass blocker, that gives you more opportunities, especially for later round picks. Because we all hear the numbers. I'm sure you see it on social media. It's after 206, the picks don't matter, which is not necessarily true. It's fun to say, but they do matter to an extent. But I think you want to give yourselves as much flexibility and as much chance as you possibly can. So what are you looking for? You're looking for guys that can get utilized in different ways. Horton or Ricky White. I don't know if he got
Mhm.
drafted here from
He didn't, no.
UNLV. So Ricky White's another one from UNLV. He's the type of guy that's going to test really well. And he looks good on tape, but you know what else he does? He's an elite, like all Mountain West Conference. And don't be laughing at Mountain West. That's my home area over here. All Mountain West Conference returner. Like he is a legitimate special teams guy. So if you're looking late and you're like, hey, who do I take? First check off what's their opportunity look like on their depth chart. Where do they look? Like, who are these guys? Like a Tyrone Tracy type guy. Like he's the running back 2 already. All right. Well, then he's just a sprained ankle away from getting a shot. And then, okay, what is that other? Okay, that opportunity checks. Is he a guy that's going to get multiple opportunities? Is it a 3-down guy? Has skill sets that can do it all? Then okay, that gives me more chances of him making a roster. And that's what I would look at with these 3rd and 4th round guys. It really comes down to opportunity, obviously, but also how many times, how can they stay on the field? And if they can stay on the field a lot more than the other guy, then you're going to have more of a shot. That's my analytics take. It's not a perfect analytics take, but it's in there somewhere.
I love it. And I agree with you. Look, that's all a lot of these guys need is a shot. When we're talking about NFL talent, there's not a huge gulf unless you're talking about these elite early 1st round guys. The rest of these guys basically fall in more or less the same bucket. So if they can get the opportunity, chances are they can produce, or at least that's what we hope. A couple of things as we wrapped up the draft. This is a good reminder from Justin that Restrepo tweeted yesterday. He tweaked his hamstring. He said I think he said, or at least it was assumed that he was running somewhere in the 4.5s. But then, of course, he ran the 4.8. So something likely to be wrong. We'll see how that goes. In terms of my strategy here, I was looking at a full rebuild. I wanted to value wide receiver over running back, but at the same time, I didn't see a ton of running back value where I was picking. I will say that we'll pretend Jack Bech is Jalen Knoll and move on there. And then, of course, Kevin, let's just take a look at your draft. You were tight end needy, so you got everybody is kind of tight end 1 in the draft. How do you feel about that pick and the rest of your guys headed into the new year?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, getting Tyler Ward, he's kind of like the jewel, right? Like because he could immediately step in and be on a team where plug and play. You're excited about having him on your roster, and then you kind of shirt up that area. And now you can kind of go trade for some other guys if you need to. Like you have the capital kind of maybe move some guys, or you can look at your roster and see where's that continuing there. Higgins, I think, gives you that opportunity to have like a wide receiver 1 type prospect in the 2nd round, which you're always looking for in that 2nd round. And where he went, I'm very comfortable. Like I like Jalen Royals, and I think Jalen Royals is okay, but I would much rather have the Higgins upstart with what he can do on the field and his profile. I think Royals is this is what Jalen Royals is. Like, this is what he's going to be. That's probably where his ceiling's at, just based on a prospect. Higgins has more upside there. So I think I got a more upside player there in the 2nd round. Tootin is just fun, and I like Tootin. Like, we've seen prospects like this go, but I mean, that speed is something. And I think teams are going to fall in love with that 4.32 stuff. And he was good in college. He was fine. Like, he did enough in college where you're like, hey, he produced 1,000 yards. Like, it wasn't like he's there. And he's big enough. 209, 210, 215, depending on where he plays. Like, he could be a very fun back where you're just rotating and you're just like, hey, and from a receiving standpoint in PPR, you like. And Horton's just a fun play. Like, these 4th round guys, I would have drafted Mason Taylor. So whoever drafted him right before me, I would have taken another tight end because I think Mason could be a fun value. And that's what I was telling you when I was saying, okay, what do you do at the tight end position? Like, I don't mind taking Warren at 105, but if he would have gone before mine, even if I wasn't a tight end needy league, I would have just taken Mason at the 305. I would have just waited, drafted Mason at 305, and been pretty happy with that too.
Yeah, I like that. And for myself, I did want to get in on the tight end action, although most were taken. I went with Gunnar Helm at the end of the draft. If you've seen the pictures of his ankle after the combine, you can say maybe we can throw out some of those combine numbers. The tape is good enough, but of course, is he going to be able to get the opportunity to catch the ball enough for us for fantasy? That's really the concern there. Plenty of other more athletic guys in this draft at the position. We do like athleticism for tight end, but it's all about that opportunity. If Helm has the chance to be on the field in a blocking situation, maybe he gets enough work in the receiving game to do something. We've seen plenty of ridiculously unathletic tight ends put up 50 catch seasons. So it is possible. So here is our board. This is our 1 quarterback PPR draft here. Kevin, if you're looking at the board in general, we've talked a little bit about values throughout, but is there any one team here, 1 or 2 teams that you just look at briefly and you say, well, I like the value that they got at a couple of different positions in a couple of different rounds, and they're set up potentially, to have a good season or, to build themselves properly?
Yeah, well, our boy Pisario, I don't know. He just took straight running backs. That guy was just like, I'm taking every running back known to man there. I like Ryan's draft because it's so fun. Travis Hunter at 108 in 1 quarterback could be a steal, right? Like, because he could be. We don't know yet what teams are going to say about him. Like, it seems like the Giants maybe is where he's going, and if he goes to the Giants based on their free agent moves, they don't really need a corner. They need a slot corner. Maybe, but like they might look at Hunter and be like, you're going to go with Neighbors. Now Russ is cooking and Jameis and whatever the hell is going on at the quarterback position. So that's a problem for the most part. But I think that it's dynasty for a reason. You're okay maybe holding on for another year. Maybe they get Arch Manning next year. And he's looked really good so far in the spring. And maybe now you have Arch Manning throwing to Travis Hunter and Neighbors. That'd be insane. Like, that would just be ridiculous. So I love his upside there. Dylan Sampson's a guy that I like. I've liked him for a long time. I think he's a very north-south, no-nonsense runner. Like, when you watch him at Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's scheme is so weird that it's hard to dictate, like, their offense is just, it sucks. It just plain and simple, like, because it's hard to same thing with Jalen Wright. When you think of the zone scheme that they run and all the pinch runs that they do and all the little things that they do, these holes are so big. But I will say Sampson did show over time that he can just be a north-south guy. Now, is he going to ever be like a dynamic guy? I don't know, but he definitely in a second round is good value. Ferguson's a great pick at 308. Like, he from Oregon, I think he's a very solid tight end. And then, like I said, with Blue, you're looking at upside there. Like, you're looking at just from a pass catching PPR machine. So I would say Ryan's draft was a lot of fun for me when I was looking at it.
I love that. And Dylan Sampson is one of my favorite runners in this class. I love that. You mentioned Jalen Wright. Not that you're saying this, but let's just be careful and never helmet scout. Jalen Wright and Dylan Sampson are completely different runners. And it's totally difficult to, like you're saying, to assess these Tennessee players and what they're truly capable of outside of this Tennessee system. At the same time, Dylan Sampson has enough wiggle, it seems like, to make and enough vision to make those decisions inside. I really like him as a runner. Over Devin Neal is a little spicy. I don't hate it, but I think it's a little spicy. So Ryan's draft, I agree with you. I'm going to go with kicking it from the 2 slot, Amarian Hampton. Hard to hate on a guy who's probably going to go in the first round of the NFL draft and potentially be a workhorse for an NFL team almost right away. You got Colston, Loveland at the 2-2. I wanted him at the 112. I love that pick. I think he should go. I would love to see him go to the Chargers. I don't see the mocks there that much, but reunite him with his head coach. They need a weapon in the passing game. I think it would make too much sense for Loveland to go there. Again, a first-round selection, definitely, I'd say. Jackson Dart, who I think should probably go in the first round as well at the 302, even in 1 QB. You mentioned it earlier. I think that's a great selection there in the early third. Savion Williams, why not? Let's get fun with it. And let's see if we can get the ball in his hands and have like a Debo Samuel Light sort of situation. Cordell Patterson, everyone wants to comp him to recently. Savion's a big boy. So if you can get the ball in his hands, we'll see. But this is like the Lamar Jackson situation, right? Where you're like, great talent, but you got to kind of build stuff around him to help him succeed. They're able to do that with Lamar. Completely different players, of course, in different positions, but Savion Williams is going to need to get all of those Rondale Moore, Cliff Kingsbury schemed up touches, 0 A-dot touches to probably bring value.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that. That was going to be my second one. I really like his draft with what he did there, especially the first 3 picks. Like, I think Loveland in the second is great value. Loveland, I know I'm gonna get crap because I dropped this YouTube channel in the Discord today. Like, Loveland is my tight end one for everybody out there. I just think Warren, the capital and the spot might push him up. That's why I kind of went with him there. But Loveland at 202 is an amazing pick, and Jackson too. And to just pivot real quick, we're doing our mock. I wanted to see what you thought of this. So for Dylan Sampson, we're doing our rookie guide, and our comp for him is Kyren Williams.
Ooh. I do like it.
So that's our comp because his running style is super similar to him. Like he has athleticism, but he can do chunk runs. He's like a chunker. And so like really Dylan reminds us a ton of Kyren. And if he has that possibility of, having a Kyren type fantasy life, that's great. I mean, that's a ceiling probably. But he reminds me a ton of Kyren Williams.
I love it. And the tape that I've watched on him, he finishes his runs as well, Sampson, when he's inside. So you love to see that at any level. And in terms of those two backs, Kyren and Sampson, is there a big weight discrepancy between the two, or are they roughly the same?
Sampson is 205, 200, 205. Yeah. I think Kyren was around the same thing, if I had to guess, when they came out. I don't know what Kyren is now, but from a size standpoint, let me look real quick because I have it up. Yeah, I mean, Kyren was 202. So, yeah, same thing.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. I love that. And like you said, if he can get anything close to what Kyren has been able to do in terms of production, I think that's a huge, huge win. In fact, it's a good segue, but we're going to take a question first. What if Loveland goes to the Colts? Listen, everyone and their mother is mocking a tight end to the Colts at 14. Whether it's Warren, maybe Warren's gone and Loveland's available, and they take Loveland first. What are you thinking? Colts tight end. They've had a history of rostering 25 tight ends a season and using none of them.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't move him down. I think that when you're looking at the Colts roster, I don't know. Maybe I'm just an idiot because I think that Anthony Richardson is not as bad as everybody says he is. Like I do still think Anthony Richardson can elevate an offense, but maybe you have too much faith in Josh Downs and Alec Pierce, because I think if Loveland goes there, he's immediately the second option probably with Michael Pittman, and it gives them that outlet too. And if you look at what Loveland was able to do with Alex Orji, I don't know how well you guys are versed in the Michigan football like myself as a Michigan fan. Alex Orji was probably the worst passing quarterback in college football last year. Out of 130 teams, I guarantee you there's 129 better than him. And Loveland still produced, and he still showed that he was the number one option on that team, and he could score touchdowns, and he's super just NFL friendly now, right? He can do 12 personnel because Harbaugh made him block for Blake Corum the year they won the national title. There was a lot of 12 personnel. His PFF blocking grade was not bad. And then he could also be on the slot. He's definitely versatile into that range. I think on this team, he'd be a lot of fun. I think they could utilize him in the red zone. An area that the Colts struggled in last year was the red zone. And it was just weird because Anthony Richardson and freaking Jonathan Taylor on your team, and they just could not scheme up enough touches and enough kind of red zone plays for those guys. So I think Loveland would help there. Now, that's where I go back, though, to the guy that asked the question. If he goes to the Colts and Warren goes somewhere where I'm like, man, they're going to definitely utilize him the right way, I could see you switching those two. And I'd be okay with that. I understand that. But I don't think I'd move Loveland down too far in my rankings if that happened. They'd be 1A, 1B, and I'd be okay with taking Loveland too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think wherever they go, they're almost certainly going in the first round. It's a huge gulf after the two of them. Maybe they slip to the second round, but to be honest, I'm not sure that there's much strength in those tertiary defensive players to really push them out of the first round. So we'll see. I do have one more question for you. We talked about Kyren Williams, so I'll start with running back. I did a little bit of a deep dive in terms of day 3 running backs and wide receivers. We posted on Reddit. We had this crazy discussion. And look, I don't think it's anything groundbreaking or anything new. At the same time, day 3 running backs and day 3 wide receivers do jack squat for you in fantasy football. So I know we're in love with all of these guys. In fact, let me throw the board up again quickly. I know we're in love with all of these guys here, like the LaQuint Allens, right? Darling Brashard Smith or DJ Giddens that we mentioned, but these guys are almost certainly going to be day 3 guys. What are your thoughts about these day 3 running backs and these day 3 wide receivers with keeping this in mind? Number one, only one running back and one wide receiver per year is able to hit. That's a loose term, hit meaning kind of be a viable piece of your dynasty roster, so that you can use them multiple times during the season, maybe a flex-worthy play as well. You also get your outliers, right? You get your Puka Nakuas and you get your Kyren Williams, for example. But those guys are few and far between, roughly hovering around 2% of the total late round drafted guys. So of that entire pool. JJ Zacharyson also did a study on this on his recent pod the other day. He came to the same conclusion in a different way, which was basically the fact that these day 3 guys don't hit. There's no statistical correlation between fantasy success and being drafted in day 3. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, being someone who's been in the weeds with these guys for years, and just watching their progression. If they're drafted on day 3, I'm feeling like I'm probably out on them in rookie drafts. Do you think that's a bridge too far, or how do you feel about draft capital and how it all shakes out?
So this is when I give you my dynasty theory talk. So this is where so then I think the day 3 guys, you're right. They just don't hit, right? And for every Puka, there's a million other guys out there. This is what I would say, though. I'd say that you have to look at it purely in the day 3 guys from a value perspective. Which one of those dudes could bump up their value? It doesn't even mean they have to play. Like, just which one of those guys over the summer has an opportunity to increase their value, right? Because the one thing that you have to know from dynasty perspective, the one last, I would say, just one up that you have on your league mates is the dynasty theory, because everybody's smart now. Everybody knows who the sleepers are. Like, that stuff doesn't matter anymore. Everybody knows who a buy is before they even a buy. Everybody knows who a sell is before they even sell. But the one area that could get you a little bit of value bump is, hey, if I draft this guy. So, I mean, last year's a good example. Tyrone Tracy, when he got drafted, Eric Gray, we knew what Eric Gray was. Like, Eric Gray was not going to be that guy. So when you're looking at it, bad team. Then looking ahead of him, he's got Singletary ahead of him. You're like, hey, well, Singletary's fine last year, but if he gets banged up, Tyrone could have that shot, and they might pass a ton. And what's Tyrone Tracy's probably good skill set is pass catching. Now, no one expected to see what he did last year. Like, He was fine. But I think what you have to look at in those 3, 4, that's why you see a lot of tight ends taken probably, is who has that role that can gain value, and then you can move them. So I would look at purely day 3 guys as, all right, who can I get on my roster that I think has a shot to just have any type of value gain at all, to where I can pivot and trade them if I need to. And I would look at them as strictly value gainers. Like, just, okay, who do out there do I think, who are some people that guys really like in the leagues? And then another way to look at it, if you're in your rookie drafts and you draft one of those guys and another guy's like, oh, that was my guy, or something like that, you snipe me, keep that in mind, because those are the guys you need to mark down and say, hey, they loved Horton. Man, they were really excited. They were mad that I got him. I bet you if there's a little bit of buzz about how good Horton is, I bet you I could maybe possibly move off of him to this manager. Maybe this manager is my guy, my patsy. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Waterboy, the guy that kicked the onside kick too. That's my guy. Like, I can move this asset. So it's more about, I think, just looking at it from a value perspective. How can I pivot off of these guys if I draft them, and who has opportunity ahead of them to just increase in value a little bit? And then you can always just be flexible, and you can kind of move them and do those things, because you're going to use the picks regardless, but use them in the right way. Like, take a guy that you really think is going to have value.
I love that. And yeah, listen, this is all we're trying to do. We're trying to help you get a leg up on your dynasty rookie drafts for your dynasty teams. And you certainly need to, you can't be stagnant, right? You need to make sure that you're making moves, and whether that's kind of doing the research, spending the time, kind of watching shows like this and listening to guys like Kevin, or whether it's kind of being active in the trade market, you can't stay still. You got to make sure that you make those moves. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. This has been Adjust the Ranks. We are here every single week doing at least one mock draft a week with some of the biggest names in the industry. Kevin himself not excluded, just talking to you about rookies, talking to you about dynasty strategy, talking to you about redraft when the season comes. We're going to be mock drafting all off season long. Please join us for those mock drafts. Remember also that we have our Discord dropping on April 5th. If you're interested in just talking ball with the Fantasy Football Universe guys and the community that we're trying to build here in the off season, you get, first access to shows, first access to just jumping in these mocks. Please do so. We're excited about that. That's coming up soon. And then again, all the big names that we have coming up in April to follow up. Tough acts to follow, but to follow up Kevin and all the other guys that we had here in March. So before we sign off, Kev of the Debbie Royale, can you tell the guys where they can find all of your information and, Devy information, of course. You're my go-to Devy guy. Whenever I have a Devy draft, I'm like, oh crap, what the hell am I going to do? So tell them where they can find that and all your rookie stuff and everything you got going on.
Yeah, you guys can just find us at the Devy Royale Substack. If you've never checked it out, we have articles dropping pretty much daily. College fantasy, Devy, C2C, Dynasty as well, and NFL draft. So we've dipped our toes in draft coverage this year, and we're pushing up there, trying to hit 1,000 subs before the end of the off season. And we're going to drop our rookie guide basically next month after the draft is over. We're going to give you guys all kinds of different content on the rookies, where you should be drafting these guys. And just basically the Substack is where we're at. We're on YouTube as well. We do a couple videos there a week, but definitely go check that out. We have our Patreon too. If you do like Devy, we do rankings there, but we have combined rankings. So essentially we rank every player. I have actually every player ranked in Dynasty plus the 26, 27, and 28 class in college. So the new freshmen coming in, I have them combined ranked. So if you've ever want to know how do you rank Luther Burden as opposed to like DeCorian Moore, who's a true freshman coming from Oregon, I do it for you. So it's easy. We have a trade calculator there also that allows you to see Devy values as opposed to Dynasty values and allows you to make your trades there. So it's a lot of fun over on our Patreon. You can check that out too.
Love it. And those Devy mock drafts are essential viewing material. So appreciate you doing all the hard work there. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. Again, this has been Adjust the Ranks, a part of the Fantasy Football Universe. Follow us over on Twitter. We're on YouTube. Those are the ones we're growing. TikTok. We're trying to grow all of that. And again, we got that Discord coming up. So if you're interested, follow us everywhere. You'll be updated with everything that's going on soon. So for Kevin, I am Jeremy, and we will see you next time. Thanks for coming in.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.